The story begins long before 1948. For centuries, the land called Palestine, nestled on the eastern shores of the Mediterranean, was a sacred place. Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike held deep religious and historical connections to this land. Yet, by the turn of the 20th century, it was home primarily to Arabs, with a smaller Jewish population. The rise of Zionism, a movement advocating for a Jewish homeland in their ancient territory, added fuel to an already complex situation. After World War I, the British Empire gained control of Palestine. They faced the daunting task of balancing the aspirations of both Arabs and Jews. The horrors of the Holocaust, which saw the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews, further intensified the Jewish desire for a safe haven. The stage was set for a clash of destinies, a conflict that continues to shape the world today. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion, a man of steely resolve, declared the creation of the State of Israel. The declaration, a beacon of hope for Jews who had endured unimaginable suffering, was met with immediate resistance. Neighboring Arab nations, viewing this as an encroachment upon land they considered their own, declared war. The day after its birth, Israel found itself fighting for survival. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War was a brutal baptism by fire. Outnumbered and outgunned, the nascent Israeli army fought with the tenacity of those who had nowhere else to go. Victory, when it came, was hard-won and Pyrrhic. Israel expanded its territory, but hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced, their homes lost in the maelstrom of war. The seeds of resentment were sown deep, creating a rift that has only widened with time. The 1948 war, known to Israelis as the War of Independence and to Palestinians as the Nakba, or catastrophe, left scars that remain to this day. Israel, having defended its right to exist, emerged as a nation forged in conflict. But the victory came at a cost. The Palestinian exodus, a mass displacement of hundreds of thousands of Arabs, created a refugee crisis that continues to define the region. Palestinian refugees, scattered across the Middle East, clung to the hope of return, their plight a constant reminder of the human cost of the conflict. The war's end did not bring peace. Instead, it ushered in an era of mistrust and hostility. Armistice lines drawn in the sand became hardened borders, separating communities and fueling future conflicts. The dream of coexistence seemed a distant hope, replaced by a cycle of violence and recrimination. The uneasy truce between Israel and its Arab neighbors was shattered in 1967. Fears of an impending attack led Israel to launch a preemptive strike, igniting the Six-Day War. With astonishing speed and ferocity, Israel routed the Egyptian, Syrian, and Jordanian armies. The victory was swift, decisive, and reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. Israel's triumph, however, came with a heavy price. The war resulted in the capture of the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and the Sinai Peninsula, territories home to millions of Palestinians. The occupation of these territories, intended as a temporary measure, morphed into a protracted reality. Settlements began to dot the West Bank, further complicating the already intricate tapestry of the region. In 1973, on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel. The war, initially catching Israel off guard, became a brutal war of attrition. Israel, though ultimately victorious, faced its greatest military challenge yet. The Yom Kippur War shattered the myth of Israeli invincibility. It also underscored the deep-seated mistrust and animosity that permeated the region. Despite the signing of peace agreements with Egypt and Jordan, the conflict continued to simmer, fueled by the unresolved Palestinian question. The Palestinian people, dispersed and dispossessed, became a symbol of the human cost of the conflict. Their plight, often overshadowed by the larger geopolitical narrative, resonated with many across the globe. The Palestinian Liberation Organization, formed in 1964, became a voice for their aspirations, often resorting to armed struggle in the face of what they perceived as Israeli oppression. The First Intifada, which erupted in 1987, marked a turning point. Palestinian civilians armed with stones and Molotov cocktails rose up against Israeli rule in the occupied territories. The world watched in horror as the conflict, once confined to battlefields, spilled into the streets, claiming the lives of both Israelis and Palestinians. The Oslo Accords, signed in 1993, offered a glimmer of hope. The agreement, a landmark achievement in the arduous path towards peace, recognized the PLO as the representative of the Palestinian people and set the stage for a two-state solution. However, the promise of Oslo remains unfulfilled. Continued settlement expansion, escalating violence, and a lack of political will on both sides have hampered progress. Today, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains one of the world's most intractable disputes. The two-state solution, once a beacon of hope, seems increasingly distant. The status quo, marked by intermittent violence, mutual distrust, and a lack of political progress, is untenable. The only path forward lies in dialogue, compromise, and a recognition of the other's humanity. Only then can the land that witnessed the birth of three major religions become a cradle of peace, not conflict.